quite some time since I really touched upon the topics in math or in quant or just general problem solving as such, right? So getting that touch back in, right? Getting a feel and hands-on experience of the multiple topics, because you have quite a bit of topics and subtopics in quant in GMAT. So getting back into the groove was probably the biggest challenge. I would say is a completely different kettle of fish. There is a point of time where any test taker, they've done quite a bit of practice that more practice probably is not really going to help. You're going to get diminishing returns after a particular point.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to our interview. Congratulations, Anirudh, on the amazing 715 score with a Q88, V87, and a D81. Spectacular all around.
Thank you very much, Rita. Glad to have finally achieved the desired target, and thank you very much for having me here.
It's a pleasure to have you. Now, before we really dive into all the ingredients that went into this amazing score, why don't you tell our audience a little bit more about yourself?
I'm Anirudh, as Rita just introduced. I have around 6 years of experience, predominantly the marketing function, and I'm really looking forward to doing my MBA.
Wonderful. So you're in marketing and now you're ready for your MBA, right? And the first step in that journey is, of course, getting the GMAT out of the way, right? I know that when you started out, you actually prepared for the old version of the exam. You were starting at around a 680 with a 55th percentile on the verbal side, and you were already starting out strong, on the quant side, and you were already starting strong on verbal at around the 80th percentile, right? Now you're here with 95th percentile in quant, a 99th percentile in verbal, and a 90th percentile in DI. So let's start with quant, because I think there is where you made one of the biggest leaps in terms of your ability, right? Going into quant, starting out at that 50th-ish percentile, what was the biggest challenge that you faced?
Though I've had a background in engineering, I'm fundamentally an engineer. But it was quite some time since I really touched upon the topics in math or in quant or just general problem solving as such, right? So getting that touch back in, right? Getting a feel and hands-on experience of the multiple topics, because you have quite a bit of topics and subtopics in quant in GMAT. So getting back into the groove was probably the biggest challenge that I faced, and getting that depth of experience as we drill down, right? So I think that was the biggest challenge for me, and quite a bit of practice helped me overcome that.
Mm-hmm. And I know that to overcome this challenge, you followed a very, very systematic approach where you were monitoring things all across, right? And I know that the quant course at e-GMAT with the PACE really helped you do that. So can you explain the process of how you went about getting back in touch with quant and then taking it to excellence?
Absolutely. I think e-GMAT has a very comprehensive system, right? Which so starts with the very basics, the absolute basics of of the different topics that you have, something from number properties to even advanced topics like probability, PNC, etc. And you have plenty of practice so that you get your fundamentals sorted. And then as we move up, we get practice questions in a timed manner, which probably build upon the competence, the ability that you have built. And then as we go ahead, you have your tougher questions which come along. And then, of course, you take it forward with the process skills, how you build upon them. You have advanced questions, difficult questions in a very time specific manner. So all in all, from a very comprehensive perspective, you are able to start from your basics, you start building up your ability, and then as you go ahead, you are able to finish it off with probably your challenging questions, and you're on a very strong wicket to take on quant.
Understood. Now, you mentioned one phrase, right? Process skills. For our viewers out there who maybe aren't as familiar with the e-GMAT terminology, what are process skills and why were they important for you?
Process skills are very simple, right? So you might have the ability to do or you might have the ability to understand what is happening in different topics, but to translate your ability into real exam performance, right? The kind of questions that GMAT hits you with, to do those questions pretty well, so to bridge that particular gap, that is process skill, right? To translate your fundamental ability in each topic to problem solving directly. So that is process skill. So that has multiple facets to it, including solving the question in a time manner, ability to solve multiple different question types in each chapter, each subtopic, and of course making sure that there are no loose ends in any of the topics that we are covering. So I think those three are some of the factors that come to play in process skills. Yeah.
Understood. Another thing that you mentioned is we started from the real basics here, right? Even in number properties, just from prime numbers, even and on so on and so forth. But I know that you also actually, despite starting from the basics, saved quite a lot of time on the quant side. How is that so? Seems like a juxtaposition.
Yeah. So in e-GMAT, I think the very good thing is you have an algorithm which really operates in real time and can understand what it is that you're doing, where it is, where are your strengths, where are your weaknesses. And as I said, when you start even from the basics, right? So you have a very useful tests at the end of each subsection even, right? Which evaluates your performance in real time. And if the algorithm determines that, okay, your ability is roughly, let's say, at the 80th percentile or 60th percentile, whichever predetermined percentile, it determines that, okay, we can skip over some of the sections because your ability is already good enough. And that way we could save quite a bit of time because, as you know, in GMAT, in quant section, there are quite a bit of topics to cover. So even a small time saving in each subtopic, as we scale up to multiple overall topics, it can help you save a lot of time.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And if I can take a quick second to actually share my screen, right? This is your account. We can see that, you saved 11 hours of course time, right? You saved 12. And this is a consistent theme. So yes, there were some basics that you needed to refresh, but wherever your strengths were, you didn't waste a single second there at all, right? So often cutting down your prep time in half, like in the case of advanced topics. And that focus on what was important really, really paid off, because when I look at your hard accuracies here, they very much predict that 95th percentile, 75, 80% hard accuracies are really, really well done. On the verbal side, one, it was already your strength coming in, right? And two, you already had some experience from the old version of the GMAT. Yet, one thing I know that you still did is the master comprehension course, right? So what role did master comprehension play?
So I think gaining the ability to really understand what it is that you're facing, right, in your verbal section is very, very important. And there are some very crucial basics that everyone needs to, really understand and go through. Starting with, for example, you're getting a question in critical reasoning or getting a question in reading comprehension. First, understanding what it is that GMAT is expecting from you, right? What is it that you're trying to do here? So that ability to really know what you're facing is very important, right? That also includes multiple facets, right? Including reading the question fully, reading the question stem properly, right? And not, let's say, trying to skimp out on reading of, let's say, a reading comprehension passage to save some time. So those are some very basic skills that one should be very sure about before going to the next few steps, right? So I think to gain that ability, we have to go through this very basic structured course here to gain that ability, I would say. Yeah.
Understood. So it's at that stepping stone into going.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a very key stepping stone, right?
Understood. So once you have those basics down pat, I know a lot of what you did on the verbal side was practice. And again, like every other step that you've taken so far in prep, it was also very structured, right? And what helped that structure was really Scholarinium, the quizzing platform. How did Scholarinium help you get to that 99th percentile on the verbal section?
Scholarinium helped very much on two very key fronts, right? One was the breadth of questions that were given, right? So even in critical reasoning, for example, you have multiple different types of questions, right? From weaken, strengthen, your evaluation-based questions, you have complete the passage kind of questions. So you have multiple different questions that are going to hit you in the exam environment, right? So while in your practice, you might have focused on one particular type of questions, you will have gained ability in those questions. But when it all comes together, how to approach it is a very, very key skill that you need to gain. So the breadth of questions is very important. Similarly, even in reading comprehension, right? Because you have different types. You have questions about, let's say, economics based. You have history based. Then you have maybe art based questions. So again, when you face multiple reading comprehension passages together, it is a very key, skill to probably to face the actual exam. So the simulating the real exam environment is very important. And then the second crucial aspect is with respect to timing. So when we practice, we might not really focus too much on timing, especially given the fact that there are some 20 odd questions in a limited time frame, right? So that is very important because you're able to simulate an actual exam section on Scholarinium, and to really hone in on your timing skills, it's super crucial, and Scholarinium helps you do that.
Understood. So, I mean, these are very, very key things, right? Simulating, getting to that breadth of questions, getting the right kind of exposure. And because you did that and you made sure that you left no stone unturned, here we sit with a V87, which is really a fantastic score to have, right? So, kudos. Well done there as well. Okay. So now you've done verbal, you've done quant. Now comes the new part of the exam, pre, right? The DI section. So what unique challenges, if any, did the DI section actually pose?
So DI, as we know, it's a completely new section in that the verbal and quant, more or less they are kind of carryovers from the GMAT old edition, but DI is pretty new. Of course, you had the IR there in the old section, but DI, I would say, is a completely different kettle of fish. So from a challenges perspective, I would say that the timing, of course, right? Because there are 20 very diverse questions, right? From graphs, tables, to even something like a verbal data sufficiency question. So you're hit with multiple different questions, and I felt timing to be a very big challenge in DI. And then coming back to the point that I mentioned, even the type of questions, right? You are hit with questions which can seem very new to you, because even in graphs there are it's a very open book in that they can ask graphical questions from any different types of graphs. And similarly with data sufficiency, as we all know, it is on the more challenging questions, because it not only tests your fundamental skills and abilities, but it goes one step beyond that as well. So that way I found DI to be a challenging section indeed. And of course you have I think I would say definitely a bit of variability as well, because of so many moving parts in that. On the day of the exam, you could find a lot of variation, in the DI questions.
Mm-hmm. So if you had to kind of list down the skill sets that you'd need to tackle DI, right, spanning across everything that you know in verbal and quant as well, what do you think that DI test takers should really look out for on that front?
So fundamentally, I would say DI is an amalgamation of the skills that you would require, that would use, that would deploy in verbal and quant, right? So fundamentally, starting off with your ability and focus on the each core section, right? Core topics, you need to be very strong in that. You shouldn't have any gaps here in your ability to approach questions. And then of course the breadth of questions, as I had mentioned, verbal, but this is more applicable here because you have a lot of different questions. So experience, developing quite a bit of practice in each of those sections is again very important. And then timing is probably the most crucial factor here. So practicing enough, taking enough sectional mocks to ensure your timing is on point, right? I think these three are some of the very key skills that one requires to get a good score in DI, I would say.
Understood. I'm going to hone in on something you just said. You mentioned sectional tests, and this is something that we touched upon on verbal as well, where you said simulating the test environment. At e-GMAT, we just call it test readiness, right? So do you think, rather, that test readiness was an essential part of prep, and that it should be an essential part of prep for other people as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I very strongly feel that even if a person has, let's say, mastered all the topics, they have the highest of abilities in every section. I would say the game is still not, game is still not yours. You have still not reached the finish line yet, because putting it all together in a test environment, right, where you have the clock which is ticking, where you have a real life scenario where something can you're hit with an unexpected question which you're not sure of, or which you think you have made a mistake, it should stop you from freaking out, right? So these are some very real challenges that we face in a test environment. So without taking these sectional tests or practice exams, right? One can never be prepared. One can never be truly prepared to take the real GMAT exam, I would say.
I think those are words to live by, right? And I think that should be one of the big takeaways that people take away from today's interview, right? But I know towards the end of all of this, you also had me step in as your mentor and you were part of the Last Mile Push program, right? What benefit did having a mentor give you in this journey to 715?
Yeah. So I would probably say there are two aspects to this, right? There is one strong psychological aspect, and then there's a functional aspect. So touching upon the psychological aspect, so having a person who knows what you're going through, right? Be it let's say your strong points, your weak points, and a general apprehension of giving the exam, right? It's a fear that we all have, right? So being out there, giving a patient ear, right, and giving unbiased feedback, I think is very important. And more important than anything else is the strong encouragement, the very strong encouragement that you get to to go out there and to push yourself further to get the best possible results. So I think these are like very important, very important role that a mentor plays, and which is very important. So that's on the psychological front. Then on the functional front, of course, as a test taker, there are going to be biases, right? You are going to have strong areas, you're going to have weak areas. More likely than not, it is that you're probably going to overemphasize your strong areas, and you might want to you naturally gravitate towards just letting some weak areas slip by. So to prevent those things, to give feedback from a very critical perspective without having a bias, a mentor is very crucial. So I think from both psychological perspective and functional perspective, having a mentor in the last mile push was super helpful for me.
Understood. So with all of this, I think one of the biggest challenges that you actually overcame, right, through the course, through mentorship and all of that is the score plateau, which is a challenge that quite a lot of people face with the
Yeah.
exam. So you actually kind of tabled around that 695 score a couple of times, and then you went on to a 715, right? What do you think was the essential change necessary for overcoming a score plateau?
Yeah. So again, here I would probably say that the psychological factor of giving the exam is very important, because there is a point of time where any test taker, they've done quite a bit of practice, that more practice probably is not really going to help. You're going to get diminishing returns after a particular point. So it is all about being cool, composed, calm in the test environment, and not freaking out, not being upset or disturbed by a very tough question, for example, or things might not go exactly as per plan. So having that cool head and going and approaching the exam is probably very important. I know this is a cliche that a lot of people before me have said, and I'm sure a lot of people again will say in the future as well. But having that calm, cool head is, I think, really what helped me. And probably I approached the attempt with an attitude that, okay, let us just consider that I'm just going to give another mock exam, right? So what is the worst that can possibly happen, right? Even if I get a lower score, okay, fine, I'll take the better score and I'll move on. So having that attitude in my case, I think it helped me get that the nerves of steel to to take the exam without worrying. So I think that helped. Yeah.
Hmm. Well, I mean, we're sitting here with the 715. So whatever you did it right, right? And I think, of course, that mindset is also very important. But I think what also shines through is your perseverance, right? And that too, it's a very strategic kind of perseverance. It wasn't as with everything that you've done, it wasn't an attempt to brute force your way through anything. You were very calm and cool as to, okay, what needs to change? What do I need to change? Right? And then you systematically made those changes. And therefore, here we sit with a 99th percentile with that wonderful lucky number 7 right in front of your score. Right? So it's nothing short of your very hard work. If there's any advice that you had to leave our viewers with, what would it be?
So I think to first kick things off, it is very important to have like a study plan, right? So you want to be kind of sure of when you want to take your GMAT, right? When you want the score to be out, and then of course leave some time for contingencies, right? You might not get the score that you want, so you might need to take the exam maybe one or two more times. So to probably have like a definite end date in mind, and then start working backwards to see what it is that you have to really achieve to get the desired score. And then of course also having a realistic understanding of your present ability, where you are, what is your strong section, what was your weak section. So getting a good understanding of that, and then planning ahead to bridge the particular gap. So I think a comprehensive plan to really start with, to to get your journey going, is probably a very key factor in getting a good GMAT score, and within the time that you set for yourself, because GMAT is one, probably if not the most important factor, but then there are other things. You have applications, you have your recommendations, etc., going forward. So I think that was a very important realization that I've had towards the end of the journey.
Understood. And I think that's really key advice. There is nothing that I can add to this wonderful, I would say, guide that you've really presented us with today.